Good evening, everyone. Welcome to this talk. First of all, thanks to organizer for organizing this session, and thanks to all of you for attending this talk. My name is Sapna Singh, and today I'm representing Women in Cybersecurity Middle East Group. This group is formed to support, mentor, guide, empower women in cybersecurity domain. About me, currently, I'm working with Deloitte and I have more than 10 years of experience in cybersecurity domain, including various domains such as network pen tests, web application assessments, incident investigation, and cloud security. I'm also a regular speaker at local, regional, and global conferences. Apart from Women in Cybersecurity Middle East Group, I'm also working with certain other communities such as Deloitte Women in Cyber India Group to support women in cyber. So today I'm going to talk about cloud security, which is one of the most important cybersecurity domain these days. At high level, I will cover core concepts of cloud, cloud benefits and challenges, and approach to secure cloud adoption. So feel free to put your questions on the chat window and I will address them at the end of the session. So let's get started. For long, cloud has been a buzzword. It means different things to different people. For some, it's online storage to store files, videos, audios, or pictures. For some, it's a computing service or software over the internet. So these all definitions are true, but cloud provides many more capabilities and services to organizations and individuals. So it's no longer a buzzword, rather than it's a key pillar for organizations in their digital transformation journey. To understand cloud ecosystem better, we need to understand the core concepts of cloud, various definitions, to make sure that we map these core concepts while implementation or while migrating to cloud. So I'll cover some of the core concepts first. So on the slide, I have the cloud computing definition as per NIST. So cloud computing is pool of configurable resources. It could be network, server, storage, application that is available over the network, and it's configurable and can be accessed from anywhere, anytime using wide variety of users' devices. So as per this, there are 5 characteristics which defines cloud. On-demand self-service. So cloud resources are available over the network and it's available on demand. What does it mean? It means the users can log into web interface of the cloud and can launch cloud resources such as compute, storage applications without any intervention from cloud provider. Broad network access. Cloud services are accessible over the internet. For public cloud, it's accessible over the internet. In case of private cloud, it's accessible over the LAN. By using wide variety of devices such as workstations, laptops, mobiles, and various kinds of IoT devices these days. Resource pooling. So cloud providers maintain pool of resources and assign virtual and physical resources to cloud customers as per their business requirement. One of the key features of cloud computing is rapid elasticity that allows cloud users to provision the resources and release them as soon as their work is done. So they can scale up and scale down resources rapidly and sometimes automatically. And that leads to a less expenditure at customer side because they need not to provision all the resources at once. Rather, they can provision whenever they need it. Managed services, cloud resources or consumption of cloud resources can be monitored, controlled, and reported. In traditional infrastructure, the cloud customers, or I would say the customers, have to invest a huge amount of money to buy everything at once. They have to set up infrastructure, data center, buy all the tools and technologies without even realizing the benefits from it. But in cloud, the customers pay what they use. So their capital expenditure gets converted to operational expenditure. Now I'll cover cloud deployment models. So deployment model defines where the infrastructure of cloud resides and who has control over cloud infrastructure. The first one is public cloud, and as the name speaks, public clouds are managed by a third-party provider where customers coexist with each other. But they have less visibility and control over the cloud infrastructure. Wherein in private cloud, this cloud is specifically designed to one particular organization or customers. It can be on-premise, it can be hosted external, it can be managed by organization itself or third-party provider. So organizations have more visibility and control over private clouds because it's for them, it's designed for them. Community cloud. This cloud is for the entities, those who have same mission, vision, privacy, and security requirement. For example, the government entities can create community cloud to share the confidential or sensitive information while maintaining the security and privacy requirements. Hybrid cloud. Hybrid cloud encompasses the feature of public cloud, private cloud, and community cloud, all of three. It can be combination of public or private, private or community, or public and community. So organizations use hybrid cloud to utilize the best features of all these three. For example, they can use public cloud to host their public information and private cloud to host their sensitive or critical data. One more popular term that we more often come across is multi-cloud. So in multi-cloud, the customers use more than one cloud provider. For example, they can use AWS and Microsoft Azure. They can use Microsoft Azure and Google Cloud to be able to utilize the best feature of all these cloud providers. Cloud service delivery models. These model defines how the services are managed by cloud provider and customers. So in on-premise infrastructure, the customer manage everything on this stack here, all the services they are supposed to manage. In infrastructure as a service model, the customers are given a virtual data center where cloud service provider manages the physical infrastructure and customers are supposed to manage the OS is installation of middleware, application deployment, and data. Platform as a service model. It's for the businesses, those who do not want to invest a huge amount of money or time to build the infrastructure from scratch, rather than they want to focus on software development. So this is a popular choice for the developers because they need not to wait for the infrastructure to be ready. Rather than they just log into the platform as a service infrastructure and start building, customizing their applications. The software as a service model is the model where softwares are available over the network or internet. So the cloud users need not to install any application in the desktop or the server because it's available for them over the network. They only need to do simple configurations to start using it. For example, Office 365 is one of the use case for this particular model. So before I move further, I'd like to talk about some of the statistics related to cloud adoption. So Gartner has predicted by 2021, the market share of the cloud will be 303 billion, which is a 63% growth from 2018. 83% of the enterprise workloads will be in the cloud by end of 2020. 94% of the enterprises are already using cloud services. 84% of the enterprises run on a multi-cloud strategy. And 2020 cloud computing results shows that enterprises are continue using multi-cloud and hybrid cloud strategies and at least using 2 public and 2 private cloud on an average. Some of the organizations are completely migrated to cloud and they have cloud only status. One of the interesting fact that I came across that cloud computing is topmost demand hard skill as per LinkedIn. And half of the most promising job in 2019 required a good knowledge of emerging technologies such as cloud computing. So it's a must to know skill and I would say knowledge that we all need to have as an IT professional or as a cybersecurity professional. If we specifically talk about cloud adoption statistics in 2020, then we cannot ignore the fact that we all are facing the COVID pandemic. And this pandemic has accelerated the cloud adoption rapidly. Organizations are providing remote working capabilities, collaboration tools, e-trainings, e-learning websites for their employees. And this could have not possible if you think about the 15, 20 years ago based on the on-premise infrastructure. So cloud has become a savior for businesses so that businesses can continue with their operations and serve their customers. In line with that, Webex has seen 600% spike in its usage in last couple of months. Microsoft Teams has observed 300% spike, Slack 200, Zoom 350% spike in its uses. Many industries such as manufacturing and education industries have observed more than 100% spike in cloud usage. And same goes for other industries. As we have seen the acceleration in adoption of cloud, so do we have observed and faced cyber attacks for cloud infrastructure. Various industries such as energy, utilities, financial services, manufacturing, government, education, transportation have observed almost 500% to 1000% spike in cyber attacks. So let me talk about what are the cloud drivers, why organizations are adopting cloud, what benefits cloud brings on the table for them. Organizations are adopting cloud for their digital transformation, for competitive advantages, for providing innovative offerings and solutions to their customer. Cloud is highly dynamic, scalable, and flexible. And customers or organization have to be a less expenditure. Many organizations, government entities, and countries have adopted now cloud first policy. What does this mean? This means that they will evaluate cloud first in case of any new deployment, new project, or new infrastructure requirement. Cloud industry has also proved with the time that having on-premise data center or setup does not directly translate to 100% security. If cloud providers are supporting organizations to achieve their regulatory compliance and security requirements, and provide right set of tools and techniques to have control over data, provide visibility and protection, then cloud providers can provide better security than on-premise infrastructure. There are various compelling events that compel organizations to adopt cloud, such as we have seen COVID-19 scenario. There could be man-made or natural disasters. There could be cyber incidents which are critical and disrupted the organizational infrastructure, or it could be a legacy data centers that organization do not want to invest more money on it. So we all know about most disruptive and emerging technologies these days, such as blockchain, machine learning, artificial intelligence, predictive analytics, image analytics, IoT devices. And these emerging technologies require huge amount of processing power, storage, and memory requirement, which is kind of difficult to procure on premise. So if you want to utilize these emerging technologies and build a new solution or provide services or support to our customers, it is easy to achieve in cloud, as cloud has no limit in terms of memory, processing, compute, or storage. Coming to COVID-19 pandemic again. Apart from other industries, we have seen increased usage of cloud in healthcare industry as well. There were various apps designed and launched to track the patient activities, their data, to perform data analysis, to provide online consultation, to automate the supply procurement for digital learning, etc. Even government entities and the organizations also have launched various apps in days or sometimes in hours to inform their customers, inform their employees, inform their users about the COVID-19 updates. So we understood that the cloud brings various benefits for the organization, but there are certain challenges and concerns that we cannot ignore. First one is regulation and compliance. So public cloud providers are geographically distributed. And if your organizations or country's regulatory requirement says that you cannot host data outside the country, then it's difficult to go for cloud provider unless cloud provider has a data center in your country's jurisdiction or is ready to provide or set up a new data center. Data security, which is top most concern for any organization when they think about migrating to cloud. Why? Because once the data is migrated to cloud, the organizations have less visibility and control over the data. Human error. So cloud technology is comparatively new, and we have resource shortage and skill shortage in cloud computing and cloud security domain. And if these cloud users are not trained enough and not aware about the misconfigurations, it's very easy to do in cloud. As cloud providers provide very easy to use web interfaces, it's just a single click that can lead to a misconfiguration and cause a complete account or infrastructure compromise. Insecure APIs. In cloud, most of the services can be accessed by APIs. So if these APIs are misconfigured or have more permissions than required, then it can also lead to a complete infrastructure compromise or data loss. Insufficient due diligence. Few organizations still use shift and lift approach to migrate their applications and data to cloud. And with that, they also migrate decades old of security depths to the cloud, wherein cloud migration provides a unique opportunity for the organizations so that they can get rid of those security issues. They can utilize the application modernization using containers, microservices, and at the same time use cloud native capabilities to secure the infrastructure, to secure the data, to secure the applications. Next is abuse of cloud services. In on-premise infrastructure, we have defined boundaries using firewalls, using IPSs, using proxies. But as we move to cloud, and more people are working remotely using wide variety of devices from different locations, the attack surface has increased in multifold. And we are observing attacks such as ransomware, data breaches, social engineering, phishing, password brute forcing, account compromise for the cloud infrastructure. Last but not least, outages. We all have observed that even the major cloud providers face outages. So to deal with this scenario, we definitely need to replicate our services even if we migrate to cloud to ensure the continuity of the business. So another important aspect to discuss about while migrating to cloud is a lack of strong governance. Not all the organizations are at the same phase in terms of cloud migration. Some organizations are already moved to cloud. They are mature enough and operating. Some of the organizations are still in their initial phase. But if they lack strong governance in the adoption of cloud, that can lead to various security concerns, such as cloud sprawl or shadow IT. And what is cloud sprawl? It's a scenario when an organization do not have strong governance and they use different clouds without a central means to view, manage, and secure. They have less visibility and control over who is using what. Another popular term is shadow IT, which is a kind of challenge for organization these days. The organizations employ or the users start using rogue cloud applications. And even the organizations have indicated that they are dealing with shadow IT, wherein the employees use unsanctioned personal devices to store the corporate data and share it. Some organizations also indicated that unauthorized use of cloud services are the biggest concern for them. So let's see how we can fix these concerns and challenges and utilize the benefits of the cloud. And for that, I will cover an approach to secure cloud adoption and talk about 4 main pillars that we should focus for securing the cloud infrastructure. Strategy, secure, vigilant, and resilient. So we need to have enterprise-wide cloud strategy to secure the cloud adoption in line with cybersecurity program of the organization and goals of business. Gartner has predicted that the investment fails if the organization do not have a enterprise-wide cloud strategy. The second important aspect would be to understand the business requirement, the problems that the cloud adoption will solve, and the expected outcome. The organization should not adopt cloud because their competitors are adopting it or other organizations are adopting it and they are successful. The next important concern would be to address and understand what cloud deployment model and service model is required, whether it's a private cloud, public cloud, community cloud, or hybrid cloud, whether it's infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, or software as a service. We also need to have a strong governance in place for successful cloud adoption. For that, relevant policies, procedures should be communicated to all the cloud users. Cloud adoption cannot be successful because it's driven by a security team or it's driven by a developers team or CIO or CFOs. It can only be successful when all the relevant stakeholders, cloud users are onboarded they are convinced of the benefits of the cloud and they are aware of the usage. For that, there should be a continuous training, education, and awareness program. We also need to perform risk assessment for the cloud infrastructure to ensure that we have all the gaps identified. In secure pillar, we try to secure the cloud infrastructure, data, and application. For that, we need to have a strong vulnerability management program and application protection program to find out the loopholes in the infrastructure, to find out the loopholes in the application and harden and secure it. For the protection of data, we can utilize cloud encryption to encrypt the sensitive data. We also need to ensure the effective identity and access management program that should be in place to secure the identity in the cloud. Under vigilant program or pillar, we focus on how we can continue our security program. It's not only about the securing the infrastructure, applications, and data once. It's all about securing the infrastructure in continuous manner. And cloud monitoring is kind of different from on-premise monitoring. Why? Because in on-premise environment, we can discover all the assets that we have. But in cloud, it's kind of difficult. By the time we scan and discover all the assets, some assets might have been released back to the cloud provider's pool. So we no longer have the inventory of that asset. But then we need to focus on the events. We need to collect as much as events and log it to the centralized inventory. Similar to on-premise infrastructure, we need to set up SIEM for cloud environment to detect and respond to security threats and alerts. It could be integrated with on-premise SIEM. It could be dedicated to cloud. It can be on-premise or in cloud, managed by organization itself, or can be outsourced. We also need to focus on cloud risk analytics and threat intelligence program, because as we move to cloud, we start receiving a sheer volume of alerts. We need to filter out the alerts which are relevant. For that, the analytics plays a very crucial role. For proactive security and understand the risk exposure for our cloud infrastructure, we need to have threat intelligence program, and it should be feeded to our SIEM to have the proactive monitoring in place so that we can secure the infrastructure in an effective manner. Last but not least, resilient. So cyber resilience is a capability where organizations ensure that even though they are in mid of a cyber attack, in mid of a natural or man-made disaster, they continue their operations. So for this capability, we need to focus on the testing of cyber incident response capabilities. We need to focus on utilizing the automation. We can build scenarios for cloud crisis simulation. We can also use cyber wargaming to train employees, to train board members, to train leaders in the organizations. So they are aware about the risk exposure and they know what their role is when the crisis comes and how they can support the continuity of the operation and resume back the business. So now I will cover some of the important topics for cloud security. We need to understand and utilize these concepts when we talk about or when we are utilizing the cloud. The first important concept is shared responsibility model. There is a common myth that once the data and applications are migrated to cloud, now cloud provider will take care of 100% security. Cloud provider will take care of everything. But this is a misconception. Because cloud security responsibility varies between cloud provider and customer based on the service model and deployment model customer has opted for. For example, in infrastructure as a service model, the cloud provider is responsible for securing the global infrastructure such as compute, storage, database, and networking, wherein customer is responsible for securing the operating system, patching it, network monitoring, firewall configuration, to secure the application for data security as well. And the same goes for platform as a service and software as a service models. But one important thing to understand that data security is always customers' responsibility. Though cloud providers provide an array of tools and techniques to secure the data, but it's customers' responsibility. So it's crucial for customers and cloud users to understand what is their responsibility whenever they adopt any cloud or migrate to cloud, to ensure that they protect the environment and they secure the data which is migrated to cloud. Next important concept would be identity and access management. As I earlier talked about, in the on-premise infrastructure, we have defined boundaries, but in cloud, we don't have defined boundaries. And I would say now the concept of perimeter has gone, and some say that identities are the new perimeter now in cloud. In on-premise infrastructure, we are concerned about that nobody should use the unauthorized laptops, unauthorized softwares, or ports. But in cloud, we concern about the usage of identity. Who is using what identity, when, and how. As we have seen various kinds of attacks for the identities, such as social engineering, guessing of the weak password, phishing, usage of lost and stolen mobile devices to access the cloud infrastructure, and that leads to data breach, where the cyber criminals can also maintain the access to the environment. To secure the identities, we need to have effective identity and access management program. Major cloud providers provide identity and access management as a service. So we should create roles and assign these roles to the cloud users, and then assign the minimum permission to these roles so that users can perform only the task what they are intended for, rather than giving everyone admin access. To deal with the situation where users have multiple passwords to access a different application, we can utilize single sign-on along with identity and access management. We should also use multi-factor authentication, which should be a de facto standard for securing the identities in cloud. We should also focus on lifecycle management of identities. If the identities are not being used in last 30, 60, or 90 days, it should be deactivated. Even we also should focus on user access provision. Along with external attacks, it's very crucial and important to monitor the user behavior analytics to find out the insider threats or activities. For example, a developer is trying to assume an administrator role and trying to do some misconfiguration which he is not intended to do. First of all, it should not be allowed because he should be assigned the least privilege for its task, what he's supposed to do. But even though if he's able to do it, it should be monitored and triggered to make sure that we have complete visibility over the identities and how it is being used to avoid any critical data breach for the organization. Next important concept would be data encryption. And as I earlier said, data security has been a topmost concern for the organizations while migrating to cloud. To protect the data stored in the cloud, organization must have a strong cloud data policy. This should be proactive in implementing best practices for protecting the cloud data. For example, the cloud providers provide various tools and services to secure the cloud, but it's ultimately it's a customer's responsibility to secure the data. They need not to encrypt everything, but at least they should protect the sensitive information such as intellectual properties, users' PII, health care records, or business critical information. And that is the reason data encryption is one of the crucial safeguards that we need to focus and take care of. There are certain steps that organizations are required to follow for adopting the encryption and effectively use it. First important step would be to formulate a cloud encryption policy that should clearly indicate what data has to be encrypted, how the encryption is protecting organizations, how encryption is adhering to the regulatory requirements. One other important component would be to key management, which should be secure, because if keys are lost, then the critical data would be at risk. Key management or storage can be done at the customer side or at the cloud provider side. It depends on the regulatory and compliance requirement of the organization. But regardless who stores it, who manages it, it should be secure. It should be securely stored. It should be accessed through multi-factor authentication. And one other recommendation would be to secure the key and data at separate places. So even though if the data is breached or stolen, the keys are still secure. Continuous cloud monitoring and compliance, which is very important in cloud infrastructure, as we are observing multifold increase in cloud-based attacks. We should be able to detect the alerts, fix it, handle it, investigate it without any delay. Another important criteria would be to consider proactive monitoring for the cloud environment. And what does this mean? Any non-compliance to the baseline should be detected and fixed as soon as possible to avoid any data breach or incident for the cloud infrastructure. We should not just trust that everything deployed in the cloud is secure and performing as expected. DevSecOps, it's another very popular term these days. And organizations, if they are developing the applications and software using cloud infrastructure or even in the on-premise environment, this should utilize the DevSecOps. So DevSecOps is a methodology that is to embed security into DevOps processes. Traditionally, the software developers had enough time. They have months or years time to develop the software and application, send it for quality assurance, send it for security testing. But now, as we have containers, we have Kubernetes or microservices, cloud, that has led to DevOps culture. And this has left behind security somewhere. So DevSecOps is an attempt to embed the security in all stages of continuous integration and delivery pipeline. To implement DevSecOps in organization required to have security first mindset to embed security in all stages. They should embrace shift left mentality to make sure that pushing security in early stages of software development. For example, even in the software designing phase, we need to perform threat modeling. We need to perform application architecture review. We need to understand application is accessing what kind of data and how the data is stored. Once the codes are built, we need to perform static code analysis or code review. Once it is compiled, we need to perform dynamic analysis. Once the applications are hosted, we need to perform penetration testing. Even in the operations phase, we need to make sure that infrastructure is protected and complied to the compliance requirement. We have continuous monitoring in place. And all these processes should be automated as much as possible. So DevSecOps is not only about the technical change in organizations, rather than it's also a cultural shift to bridge the gaps among developers, operations, and security teams, to make sure that not only this automated validation and security checks are implemented, but also the knowledge and skill sets are being built so that the developers or operations people can fix the issues as soon as those occur. Next would be automation that I would definitely like to talk about, because in cloud, we should use automation to achieve and utilize the cloud effectively. And in security, we should use automation in DevSecOps, as I earlier talked about. With using automation, we need to embed the security as early as possible and perform all kinds of checks to secure the development. We should use automation to build infrastructure. We should use automation in incident response and security response. And let's see how it helps. As I talked about, cloud based attacks are accelerating in multifolds. And concerning the fact that we have shortage of resources and skill set, our security folks are dealing the sheer volume of or huge amount of alerts every day. And with that, they tend to miss the most critical incident investigations or strategic tasks. Using automation, our aim should be to reduce the number of alerts by finding out the misconfigurations, poor security practices, or loose permissions. Fix it as soon as possible as it occurs. And also, we need to find out the common alerts that we see on a day-to-day basis, such as brute forcing, which is very common, or scanning, which is very common. Then we need to create a playbooks and automate these playbooks so that our security teams need not to worry about these alerts, because these are automatically fixed. And it also helps our teams, security folks, to focus on the more strategic task and critical incident investigation, and so that they can avoid the monotonous and repetitive task every day. And at the same time, it provides overall security and reduce the risk for the organizations. So now I will talk about how we can use automation to build a secure infrastructure. So there is a concept called infrastructure as a code that can be used to build a hardened and secure infrastructure each time business units want it. So here we can use code to launch the secure infrastructure. We can utilize such Terraform, which is applicable to all the major cloud providers. We can use AWS CloudFormation, Google Cloud Deployment Manager, Shep, or Puppet to launch these codes in a cloud environment and get ready the infrastructure, which is secured, which is hardened. But what about the changes that happens later? So once we launch the infrastructure, which is secure and hardened, but what about if somebody make changes? If developer is making a misconfiguration, or the account is compromised and cyber criminals are making unauthorized changes, in that case we can use a concept called security as a code or compliance as a code. To showcase this, I have a demo for you. I am using AWS and security groups. So security groups are kind of firewalls for organizations in cloud to protect their host. And here you can see the list of security groups. And on one security group, the port 80 is already added so that web services are accessible over the internet. But I don't want anybody else to add any other port. So here SSH is added to allow this port to everyone on the internet. And let's see what happens when it is saved. So once this is saved and we refresh it again, you'd see that rule is removed. Let's try to add the same in outbound rules for the security group. Here would be trying to add SQL port and allow it outbound to everyone, which is unexpected. We don't want it to be added. And let's see what happens once we refresh it. It's removed. Why? Because we are using security as a code. We have code that is securing our infrastructure. So each these unexpected changes are triggering an event. These events are detected by cloud native services in AWS, which are CloudTrail and CloudWatch. In case of unexpected changes, these services trigger a code written in AWS Lambda. And here you would see the code. So this is the code which was used to remediate the issues that you have seen that security rules are removed, which were unexpected. So we understood that it's easy to code in a cloud environment and achieve the compliance, achieve the security, where if the same thing we want to achieve in on-premise infrastructure, it would be kind of difficult. So I have covered the important topics in cloud security, such as shared responsibility model, DevSecOps, continuous monitoring, identity and access management, automation, and also discuss about the infrastructure as a code and security as a code that we should utilize when we are adopting a new cloud technology, when we are moving our applications data to the cloud. So with that, that's it from my side for today. Feel free to put your questions on the chat window. And if you don't have any question right now, but if you think about anything later, you can contact me on Twitter and LinkedIn. I'm very much active on these two social media accounts. So these are the social media channels of the Women in Cybersecurity Middle East group that I would recommend you to follow to keep track of the latest happening that are happening in the Women in Cybersecurity Middle East group. So one of the question that I see is about how we can perform the application assessment on the cloud infrastructure or infrastructure pentest on the cloud environment. It's similar to your on-premise infrastructure. First important step would be to get the permission from the cloud provider that you are going to pentest. Second would be to find out whether it's external pentest or internal pentest. If it is external pentest, you can use the tools such as Pursuit, which already or generally used in on-premise environment. For application pentest or automated tools, you can do manual pen test or application assessment. If this is internal, then you have to deploy the tools in the cloud infrastructure. For that, you can use open source scripts, open source tools, or you can find out the commercial tools in marketplace, as well as you can use cloud native tools which are provided by the cloud providers itself. So I don't see any other questions on the chat window, but feel free to reach out to me if you have any question on the LinkedIn or Twitter. Thank you for your nice comments. I can see. Thanks a lot for your nice comments. Definitely, it made my day. Thank you. One more thing, the session is recorded and the slides will be shared with all of you. Okay, some of the audiences are saying to show my contact information again. So this is my Twitter account, and you can search Sapna Singh on LinkedIn and you'll find me. Let me go over just once again if there is any more questions. How can I secure private cloud? There is one more question. So as I explained about the four main pillars, and the four main pillars would be applicable for securing the private cloud as well. You need to focus on strategy so that you are aligned with your cybersecurity program and you have a strong governance in place to secure the private cloud, as well as then you need to focus on the application assessment, infrastructure assessment, hardening, and continuous monitoring. Make sure that you onboard all the logs from your private cloud also to your SIM, and you have continuous monitoring in place. Are there any certification of attendance? I am not sure as of now. I'll share my slides, and as I said, this recording is will be shared with you guys. Uh, One more question. What are the most common attacks on cloud? Most common attacks are DDoS these days, crypto mining, data breach, and more often we come across news that about the data breach, such as S3 bucket, which is more common, blob exposure, which is a storage in Azure, that we more often come across, identity-based attacks, API-based attacks. So these are the most common attacks. My account in Twitter does not work. Oh, okay. That is Sapna S1NGH. I think my mistake. Sapna SAPNA S1NGH. Slides can be translated to Arabic or not. That I need to figure out how can we do it. In case there was a cut in internet, can we work offline then sync the data to cloud after repairing the network? Yes, definitely. If you're working on OneDrive or Google Drive, you can do it. But if your application is completely on the cloud, then you cannot access the applications or data, right? If you're accessing right over the internet. But if you have on premise clients available, you can definitely do it. Okay, so yes, I think I'm done. I don't see any more questions. So thanks a lot, everyone, for attending this talk. I really appreciate your time today. Thanks for hearing me and learning new things. Thanks, everyone.